be here. I just learned this is the oldest TEDx, and all the more reason to be happy. Since the time given for a TED talk is so short, I'm going to get right on to the topic at hand. Let me start by asking you a couple of questions. All of you are familiar with this name. How do I describe what they do? Can I say this is the leading automobile manufacturer?
Microsoft, leading IT services provider. Aditya Birla, Ultratech part of it, is the leading cement manufacturer. This is the normal description. But my opinion is all these three names and any other name that you can think of are actually in the same business. And one should never forget that the business of running a business enterprise is to make profit. Tata Motors does not make automobiles just for the pleasure of making automobiles. Microsoft does not prepare software just for the pleasure that it gives them in making software. The objective of running a business enterprise is to make profit. Second question before I start, let's imagine this company has in the production department 150 people, and in the marketing department another 60 people there, and in the HR department there are 30 people working, and in the finance department there are 15 people working. How many of these people can say how many are non-finance persons? Once again, not a single person can say that that person is a non-finance person. So what do I mean there are no non-finance people? Everybody is a finance person. Who is a finance person? What is the job of that person? Is it the job of a finance person to track financial information, collect financial data, record that data, collate that data, present that data, to prepare financial statements like profit loss accounts and balance sheets? And the answer is no. That is the job of the accounts person. So had my question been how many are non-accounting professionals, then I would have agreed with your answer. But folks, if collecting, recording, presenting financial data is not finance management, then what is finance management? I'm going to give you my definition now. According to me, finance management is merely the ability on the part of every individual in the organization to understand the financial implication of whatever you do. Whether you're a production person, whether you're an HR person or a marketing person or any other function you're performing, you got to understand the financial implication of what you do. And folks, you must understand the message I'm trying to pass on to you right now, before I head on to what is the objective of today's talk, is that unless every individual within any organization can understand, can actually do only financially intelligent actions, whether you're producing or you're selling or you're hiring, that organization's finance management cannot be at its best. Now, the reason I gave you this input is a few years back, a study was conducted of all the sick businesses in the world, the businesses that had failed. And to cut a long story short, normal perception would be businesses fail because either the product might be faulty, or some people know how to make a wonderful product but they can't sell. Other companies face labor problems. There could be numerous reasons for business failures. But the study has found that out of all the businesses in the world, over 95% of them have failed due to one reason, and that is financial mismanagement. And the point I'm trying to drive home is financial mismanagement not on the part of the finance people. It's on the part of the people who call themselves non-finance. Now that's very dangerous. When you don't even think that's your responsibility, how can you set it right? And I think this is a very, very apt time to speak at a platform like this, because you guys are going to go out in the world soon. And most of you, being from a technology institute, are going to be handling functions that you think are non-finance. Now, if finance mismanagement causes so much of grief, if so many businesses in the world shut down because of bad finance management, then obviously the need everywhere is to practice good finance management. So the natural reaction of any entrepreneur listening to me is, so can you tell me what is good finance management so that I can start practicing, so that I don't become a victim of this? Now, either finance management can be a huge subject, it can take years to learn, it's a massive philosophy. But I have kind of condensed the essence of good finance management, and I present it in the form of 2 rules, which I'm going to share with you, of course, in a nutshell. It would take at least a couple of hours to discuss them at length. My conviction is, folks, you understand these 2 rules. You internalize these 2 rules. If you can promise me never to violate these 2 rules, I will promise you most problems that others suffer on account of bad finance management, you will not. In the limited time, let me try and see how much I can communicate. But for that, it is important that we all understand a financial statement called balance sheet. So I'm going to give you a 3-minute 101 into what is a balance sheet. A balance sheet tells you one side shows liabilities and the other side shows assets. Liabilities are nothing but they represent where the money has come from. They represent sources of money, and assets represent utilization of money. In any organization, money comes from 2 sources. Either the entrepreneur invests, that is called capital, or you borrow money from some outsider. Business needs to borrow. It borrows from the owner and it borrows from an outsider. Since both are in the nature of borrowings, both are shown as liabilities. The difference, of course, between the owner and the outsider is outsiders don't take risks, they expect a guaranteed return. Owners say, we don't want a guaranteed return. If the business doesn't make money, we'll take nothing. But to compensate for that risk, when the business does make money, they say we will take everything. So let's imagine this organization borrows maybe 400 from the owners, 600 from outsiders. They deploy this 1,000 and they start generating a revenue after putting it to use. And let's say they generate a revenue of 3,000. Now, how many groups will this revenue get distributed in? Whatever revenue any organization anywhere in the world generates gets distributed amongst 4 groups. First part is a certain amount goes into what is known as operating expenses. If 1,600 is your operating expenses, you're left with 1,400. This figure is called, either it's called operating profit or it is called profit before interest and tax. The second group that you need to pay is the lender. So you pay interest to the lender. What is left is called profit before tax. Then you pay a certain percentage to the government. So it is called profit after tax. And now what is left belongs to the owner. Owner's condition was, if you don't earn, I will take nothing. But when you earn, I will take everything. And the organization had agreed. But no organization honors that commitment. No organization distributes the entire profit amongst the owners. The first thing I think an entrepreneur realizes after setting up a business is that in a business, there is no connection between the profit that a business makes and the money that it has. If at all there is a connection, there's an inverse relationship. Greater the profit that you make, lower the bank balance that you possess. And therefore, even though the business had said the owner will give you the entire profit, very often due to lack of liquid cash, a certain portion might be given away to the owners by way of dividend, balance is retained back in the business. So this effectively becomes a further contribution of the owner and therefore also appears in your balance sheet under a heading called reserves. Point I'm trying to make, owners contribute in 2 ways. They contribute directly when they invest their money, called capital. They contribute indirectly when they leave behind the profit that appears as reserves. Outsiders contribute directly by way of giving you loans, and they give you loans not only in cash, but sometimes you go and borrow materials and other things and say, we'll pay you later. Those items also appear as liabilities. So liability side represents a collection of sources. What does an organization do with this money? It goes into 2 avenues. It goes towards creation of infrastructure, represented by fixed assets, and it goes towards supply of working capital. 3 components of working capital are there. For shortage of time, I'm not going to elaborate. Because I need to get down to, in the next 7 minutes, I have to tell you the 2 rules, golden rules of good finance management. So what are these rules that can save you from sickness, failure? The first rule says you must always remember, never ever forget, that out of all the sources of money, none are free. Sources are not free. Sources come at a cost. And therefore, if sources of money as represented on the left side of the balance sheet have a cost attached to them, then the utilization of money appearing on the right side of the balance sheet have an ability to earn associated with them. And the first golden rule of good finance management says, you must never ever invest your money in any activity, in any business, without ensuring what this side can generate is either equal to or greater than the cost of the left-hand side. Now, on the one hand, this is such an elementary rule. To understand this rule, you don't even need to be literate. I think even illiterate people understand. What do I mean by that? Catch an illiterate fellow, tell him, there's a money lender sitting over there. Will you go to that money lender and borrow maybe 10,000? This illiterate fellow goes to the money lender, borrows 10,000, but the money lender says, I'm going to charge you, let's say, 15% interest. The moment this illiterate person walks out of the money lender's shop, you intercept him and tell this person, give this 10,000 to me, and I will now pay you 10%. What answer will you get? No. Why not? This illiterate person understands. He won't use this language. But what this illiterate person is saying, I can't give it to you because this offer you made to me now is violating the golden rule number 1. So folks, on the one hand, I've told you this is a golden rule. On the other hand, I'm telling you, even illiterates understand. Your reaction will be, then Anil, why are you calling it a golden rule if everybody understands? Ladies and gentlemen, you will be amazed what an illiterate person will not do. How many large corporations there are world over that are guilty of doing. What are they guilty of doing? They are guilty of investing their money into avenues where they are not even generating a return which is even equal to the cost of capital, and what is scary is they don't even know it. This is such a neglected area. Everybody understands the cost of production. Everybody understands the cost of marketing. Everybody understands the cost of administration. What they don't understand is the cost of capital. Recently, I was reading an article by Bain & Company in the US. That Bain & Company research has found that in the US, 9 out of 10 businesses routinely fail to earn even the cost of capital invested in them. What does it mean? It means where this illiterate person said no, 9 out of 10 in US would have said yes. And if that's the case in US, you can imagine what must be the case over here. You went to this illiterate person, you said, give me that 10,000, I will pay you 10%. What answer did you get? No. Why not? He said, I'm paying 15. How can I give it to you at 10? Let's say you tell him, all right, you're paying 15, I understand. I'll be happy to offer you 20%. Can he give it to you now? Is this investment opportunity satisfying rule 1? Yes. But he may still not give it to you. This person may not give it to you if this investment opportunity, which is satisfying rule number 1, is perhaps not satisfying rule number 2, which I haven't told you yet. I will give you the situation, you try and draft the rule yourselves. When this illiterate person went to the money lender, I want to borrow 10,000. Money lender said, all right, but I'm going to charge you 15% interest. And the money lender said, Mr. Borrower, one more condition. Make sure you return this money over the next 1 month. You went to this person, you said, give it to me, I will give you 20%, and I will return this money after 2 months. Can he give it to you? Now, here's an investment opportunity that satisfies rule number 1, but fails to satisfy rule number 2, and therefore still should not be taken up. Therefore, rule number 2 says, invest your money in such a way that the assets will bring it back before the liabilities ask for it back. So if I give you these 2 rules in a nutshell, the first rule says, investment in assets must generate a return which is at least equal to the cost of capital. And rule number 2 says, assets must bring a cash inflow before the liabilities demand an outflow. Don't violate these 2 rules. I will guarantee you will not get into that kind of trouble that most businesses in the world that failed got into. Even if 1 rule is violated, you will pay a price. I made it sound extremely simple, but what I've told you is extremely important, extremely profound. If I had the luxury of maybe half a day ahead of me, I could have taken you into great detail. Thank you so much. I think the clock has reached zero. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.